Hello friends, and welcome to my video about pignut hickory, carya glabra of the Juglundaceae family. So here we'll talk about the range of pignut hickory. Covers nearly all of the eastern United States besides the southernmost tip of Florida and then northern Michigan and beyond. It grows most prolifically in the Ohio River Basin, and it's the most common hickory found on the Appalachian Mountains. And then on the left, you can see a range map specific to Michigan there. Now I'll explain the uses. The nuts are a great food source for wildlife. They actually make up a main portion of the diets for squirrels, turkey, and songbirds. And then they're a supplementary part of the diet for black bear, foxes, rabbits, white-tailed deers, and raccoons. And in terms of human use, it's not super useful for us in terms of lumber, but it has some niche purposes such as tool handles, flooring, and farm equipment. It's a great firewood due to the density of the wood. And then, as everybody knows, hickories are the classic woods used for adding that smoky barbecue flavor. For some of the main morphological traits, I'll start with the bark. So the mature bark looks kind of like a cross between the shagbark hickory and the bitternut hickory. It's dark like the bitternut, but it doesn't actually shag off and peel off in strips like the shagbark. The bud looks pretty much exactly like the shagbark bud, but it's smaller and it always remains tightly closed. And the shagbark actually kind of opens up on its outer scales and sort of flares out. The male fruit's a catkin, and the leaves are compound, composed of 5 leaflets, and they have a very long petiole on the rachis that's attaching it to the twig. The female flowers have egg-shaped ovaries covered in hairs, and they sit in clusters of 2 to 4 at the tips of the current year's growth. And then a main identifying factor of all the hickories is actually the nuts. So on pignut, the seams which run down the sides of the fruits go halfway to 3/4 of the way down to the base, but never all the way. And in pignut, some fruits are actually sweet and edible, while others are bitter and unpalatable. And it was named pignut hickory for this reason, because they thought that these bitter nuts were only fit for pigs. Pignut hickory is intolerant of shade, except for on its most desirable sites, where it can actually exhibit intermediate shade tolerance. Pignut hickory likes growing on ridgetops and side slopes. It grows in a very wide range of different soil types, so it's hard to really specify what type of soil it grows in. However, it often thrives where a clay subsoil underlies a sandy/loamy surface horizon. This is because its large taproot allows it to penetrate deeper into this moisture-retaining clay layer, allowing it to outcompete other trees on these types of sites. In terms of reproduction, the seeds germinate in the next spring underground after they overwinter in the duff. However, after 1 year, they typically lose all their viability. Hickories can also stump sprout and root sprout very well. If you ever want to stratify your own seeds, you can hold them at 33 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 150 days so you can plant them in the spring. Otherwise, you can just stick them in the ground in the fall and let Mother Nature do the stratifying for you. In terms of associated cover, the range is so wide and across so many different elevations that there isn't really a definitive answer for associated cover. So I'll tell you what I've personally seen in southeast Michigan. I've seen them growing with silver oak, shagbark hickory, sugar maple, black cherry, sassafras, serviceberry, and mayapple. And you'll notice these are some very dry or mesic-loving species. And there's a ton of forest types it's a part of. The main ones I'd imagine you'd see them growing in Michigan would probably be oak hickory, white oak, northern red oak forests. The most major pest for pignut hickory is called the hickory bark beetle. This creates galleries under the bark, similar to emerald ash borer. However, it only really attacks the trees and kills them in times of severe drought stress. It's susceptible to a few leaf diseases, a trunk rot, which produces cankers, a stem canker, ambrosia beetle, which attacks logs and dead trees, twig girdler, and phomopsis. So, for some fun facts, there's an extremely related species called Carya ovalis. And the lines are kind of blurred between the differences and how distinct they are. So some sources claim that this is actually the same species. Some say this is a variety of Carya glabra, and some claim it's its own distinct species. And Michigan Flora actually says that this variety, which is called sweet pignut hickory, is actually the most abundant of the two in Michigan. And you can identify it because it has purple/red petioles rather than green, and it more often has 7 leaflets than the usual 5 of pignut hickory. And I found a bunch of really nice old specimens of this hickory. I find them all the time in southeast Michigan, especially near abandoned farms, and primarily along their old fence lines and ridges.